So initially I wanted to trash on Rezael because of his divine skill, or at least the way it was depicted on the show. Because there was a little bit of missing context, so I thought the effect might have been extremely overtuned or undertuned. But now that we have seen the effect of Rezael in the proper text form and with translation, it is perfectly tuned.
As all things should be.
And in the best way possible. This deck is actually great, and even though it doesn't really properly represent Angel Feather as a clan, it does represent a sub-archetype of Angel Feather units that for those who are in the Odo era may not know, but those who live in V era might be familiar with Magu Melek or Arc 8 archetypes. But this is not exactly the same way of that the deck plays, but it played very similarly. And as usual, I'm gonna be talking about what does the Rezael do as a deck, what does his supports do, and of course, the most importantly, how good is the deck and what are the problems of the deck.
So, I believe I made myself clear.
Let's start off with the right line, and in my honest opinion, so far, based on some of the context we know with the Vanguard right line as well, this is actually a very solid right line. It wasn't very clear the way it was depicted on the anime, but I do think now that we have seen the whole text of it, there are plus and minus of the deck, but it mostly leans toward positive. As we can start off with Patrol of Gods Ventesta. This unit has 2 skills, one of which is a Rega skill where he gets additional 2k when you have a Rezael Vanguard with grade 3 or greater. And some of you might be wondering, so how are you going to get this thing on the field if it's in the right line? Well, it's in his first skill. When this unit is brought upon by Ascension, essentially the grade 2, call this card to Regard Circle and Soul Charge 1. This card is good in the sense that it recovers the soul that you gonna lost from him superior calling to the Regard Circle, and in all fairness, this deck gonna use a lot of soul, so this is nice to have. But the fact that it does Soul Charge 1 also means that there is a risk of you losing one trigger. If you manage to Soul Charge critical, that is fine, but if you manage to Soul Charge anything but critical, that is a trigger, it's gonna be a painful move for you, as it did happen to me. But regardless, it is a very solid skill nonetheless. Advancing into the grade 2, we have Knight of Great Advance. Get it? Advance. Ascension. When this unit is brought upon by grade 3 with Rezael in its name, choose up to 1 grade 2 or less card from your drop zone, call it to Regard Circle. Very simplistic effect, and I'm glad that this doesn't have additional effect because this is super strong effects, and sometimes you rather have a right line that doesn't do a lot because you can just Soul Blast it out and use it for cards like Topaz. So it is a really great setup card and a really good Soul Blast target overall. And in my honest opinion, it is also a very nice foreshadowing to what Rezael does in general. As we move into the fated one of miracles, Rezael. This unit has 2 skills, and I'm gonna be talking about the skill one by one because there is a lot to discuss here. As we go into the first effects, when this unit attack a Vanguard, Counter Blast 1 shoots up to 2 cards from your drop with different grade and the total grade less than or equal to the number of cards in your damage zone, call them to Regard Circle. This is an incredible ability. The fact that you can super call up to 2 cards, this means that with its full power, you can either go for 4 attacks with additional boost, or you can go for 5 attacks with a slightly lesser strong attack. This flexibility is actually really great, especially if you're considering some of the support in Keter is capable of removing itself from the field with cards like Painkiller and Serugaon.
Synergy.
But the effect does have a limitation, and that is damage, as this skill does encourage you to have more damage in your damage zone to actually get a huge amount of rush. This sounds bad at first, but I do feel the flexibility of this card has to be considered together with his divine skill.
奇跡は舞い降りる。何？6点目のダメージでトリガーユニットが出たとき、ダメージを1つ回復する。
And that divine skill is Act Soul Blast 1, return or critical trigger from your drops to your deck and then shuffle your deck. Then this unit get additional drive until the end of turn, and for the rest of this game, you cannot write any other grade 3 or greater cards aside from the unit with Rezael in its name. And the player get additional ability where if you damage check a trigger that is not a heal trigger and you're at 5 or more damage, you can heal 1 time. But after after that one heal, you lose that ability. So yeah, it is exactly the same way as it was shown on the show, but what they didn't really mention on the show or in the end of the episode, the card review, was that this skill doesn't trigger when you review a heal trigger. For some people might consider this a bad thing, but I think this is actually for the better. For one reason, heal trigger already help you to survive. You don't really need to add additional survivability to the skill. All you need to do is just make every other defensive triggers a way for you to heal. That is the best way to do it. And in all fairness, you still can technically heal 2 damage if you manage to check OT on 5th damage, which is not gonna happen that often, but it will happen enough for it to be a reoccurring thing. So why am I saying that the divine skill kind of works well with the first skill? Even though the first skill requires you to have more damage, well, it kind of allows Rezael to essentially choose between either guard early game so that you can actually use the divine skill early, or you can take additional damage and push for a rush. I do feel like this flexibility in decision in what the deck can do is actually one of the strongest point about Rezael as a deck. But this card also have one additional utility that I think some people may already considering it, and that is this is a very busted secondary Vanguard to run in any heater deck. And this is boiled down to the fact that his skill, other than the fact that once you use the divine skill you cannot write into anything but Rezael, everything else is generic. So that means that if you are in a situation where you feel that you cannot really play your deck already, you can just simply write into this card and essentially just return all the critical back to deck, get additional drive from it, and have a clutch heal. On top, the card is capable of doing multiple attacks. So yeah, this card has a lot of utility that I feel go beyond his own deck. But he does have a little bit of problem, and that is he doesn't gain a single drop of power. The only thing that he rely on is trigger, very similar to Hexa Orb, but because of the fact that his playstyle is not really a trigger focus, it's a rear focus, most of his power is at the rear guard in all fairness. As during the stream, we did get 3 additional cards that was revealed as a Rezael support on top of 1 common card that was revealed as a card of the day, and all of this support I feel does a really good job at supporting this particular deck. And I can say that the support is a mashing success as we move into Gigantic Masher.
Stop it. Get some help.
Gigantic Masher has a very simplistic skill. It has a constant skill where it gets additional 15k when any unit is called by Rezael's skill, which does include himself. This is a very simplistic 28k attacker without considering Persona Right or Trigger Boost. So overall, I do have to say very simple but very solid. Then we move into the second card, Aerial Sage, which is the double R of the set, and he has a very similar effect to Kerhalf, but I do feel he has a better utility compared to that card, and that is boiled down to his second skill. His first skill is the same. When he's being used as a booster, he gets additional 5k every Vanguard is Rezael. But his main second skill is that if he boosts a Rezael Vanguard, discard 1, countercharge 1, and he gets additional 2k. This literally just makes Rezael column at least 28k. So the number hit just enough for the opponent to actually force out a 2-card guard, regardless of whether they get at least 1 defensive or not. This is actually very useful, and the fact that it countercharge also means that Rezael will always get his skill out no matter how many damage you are at.
Hey, that's pretty good.
A much better card even if it does cause a discard from your hand. Then we have last but not least, creme la de creme of Rezael's first set of support, Knight of Gentle Beauty, Noia. This unit has 2 abilities, 1 utility base and 1 offensive base, and the offensive one, nothing much to say about it. It just gets additional 10k when attack grade 3 or greater unit, when you have grade 3 or greater Rezael unit, but it does cause a Soul Blast. This will come in play later, but it will not get in the way of her first skill. When placed on Vanguard Circle, from anywhere, if you have grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Rezael in its name, counter blast 1, check top 3 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 grade 3 or less card among them, call it to Vanguard Circle, and put the rest to the bottom of the deck in any order. If this effect triggers during battle phase, you have to review the card and put it into your hand instead of calling it. What made this card so strong is in her first ability, as it is literally a cheaper version of Gariba, even though it is turn 3. But I would say the best part about her that Gariba couldn't really fought against against is in the fact that during the battle phase, she can actually fetch anything from deck to hand, including but not limited to Rezael himself for Persona Right, a PG for guarding, or even Elementaria for guarding against guard restrict unit. This is how flexible Noia is, even though you only check top 3 card and you have to bottom it. I do feel those restriction kind of balances out with how strong of a utility this card really is. And trust me, Rezael gonna need this a lot. As we are moving into talking about the best part of the deck on launch and the bad part about the deck. So the good part is very obvious. The deck is very good at surviving and also filtering. I would say the deck has a very similar survival tanking playstyle as Luat, but instead of you striding and super calling grade 1s and use ritual, you are using things that is very reminiscent of Angel Feather as a clan. And the deck also capable of going consistent multi-attack with a strong column, meanwhile still can take full advantage of Keter insane generics. But that is all the deck does at the moment. As we move into the bad part about the deck, and that is essentially useberg problem. Because of the fact that you excavate so little most of the time, this means that you have a high chance to whiff. This whiff is not as bad as useberg because useberg needs specifically either Corino, Fergosa, or any of the rival form. This one, you might run into a situation where you are forced to call a card that you don't really want to use for any other situation now, just for the sake of filtering. On top of that, the Vanguard, even though it is able to hit 28k with the help of Aerial Sage, if you don't have Aerial Sage, the Vanguard is a weakest link. And this might be a little bit of nitpicking, but the deck has quite a problem with Soul. Thanks to Noia offensive ability needs Soul Blast, and some of the cards in the deck you will need to Soul Blast as well, with things like Gariber and Painkiller, which are, I would say, a must to run in this deck. And then of course, Rezael need a Soul Blast. These nitpicks are very minor, as the deck is extremely flexible to play in general. But that is my thoughts about it. What do you guys think about Rezael as a right line, and are you guys excited to use him in the tournament setting? Do leave down the comments below, and yeah, that's all I have for today. Take care of yourself. Don't forget to leave a sub for me. I'm hitting 1k soon, so help me reaching that goal. And yeah, this is Megane signing out.